We know that if Randy were with us today, he would say, keep it short. And so, with that advisory, I shall endeavor to keep it short in a tribute to a great and good friend of many years. You'll hear biography from the speakers today, all of them distinguished and experienced in their own fields. When my wife and I arrived, fresh from Europe after 3 years of study at Munich, with 2 children, in Atlanta, Georgia, to take up my teaching duties there that year, my first resident professorship here in the United States, I had one name on arriving in Atlanta, and that from a professor, Gerhard Niemeyer at the University of Notre Dame, who was my mentor and who meant a great deal to me throughout all his life. He said, you have to meet Randy Richardson. And so we met Randy, and we met Pat, and we met Heather, and Rod, tiny children. We had a wonderful experience that year at Georgia Tech. When we moved north to Washington to found the Center for Strategic, what is now CSIS, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, then at Georgetown University. Randy was a frequent visitor because he was curious to know what we were all about and why or how, under the leadership of Admiral Arleigh Burke and my senior colleague David Abshire, late departed, what we intended to do. Randy was fully supportive. And at that point, enter Frank R. Barnett, then Associated Executive Secretary, I believe, with the Smith-Richardson Foundation, who supported all that work, and the other good foundations of that time and those that have come since, such as Lilly and Glenn Mead and Relman Earhart, all supportive, almost in one phalanx of solid support for just causes. When in Atlanta, I also met, through Randy, Ed Noble, another great American who had done much throughout all his life to build free societies and to resist totalitarian temptations and persuasions. Ed Noble also had an office with pipes running through. He owned the shopping center at Lenox Square in Atlanta, but he had pipes running through his office, just like Randy liked pipes running through the offices. Frank Barnett, in the mix, established the National Strategy Information Center. The corpus of this entire exercise began to grow and grow. Randy was a stimulus for all of it. The League to Save Carthage was created. Bo Calloway and Frank Barnett and Randy and many others. And the Young Presidents Organization, particularly the Rebel chapter located in the Southeast, was very, very active in supporting good causes. The Conservative Book Club was one of Randy's great achievements. He founded it with a Chicago entrepreneur by the name of Gerald Gidwitz, both of them working hard to establish a conservative niche, so to speak, with very few outlets to advertise, perhaps occasionally in the Wall Street Journal and in, of course, National Review, which had been in existence since 1955. In 1966, I moved to the Hoover Institution at Stanford, and Randy was a frequent visitor there as well. Run by the inimitable Glenn Campbell, the Hoover Institution grew and grew, and its importance became more widely known throughout the United States and the world. I often went to New York City, and when in 1968 I was summoned to run the foreign policy operations for Richard Nixon's campaign, I came to New York expecting to live in a hotel. But Randy and Pat would have none of that. I was to live at 983 Park Avenue at 83rd and Park with them. And for nearly 7 months of a campaign and through the transition, I bunked in with the Richardsons. Heather used to sneak into my room in the morning and ask me to tell her a story, which I did, always obliged. She was in place of our 6, then later 7 children. It was a wonderful family atmosphere for which I will be forever grateful. So Randy and Pat have meant a great deal to me all of my life, and so has the Richardson name. I served briefly on the foundation in the 1980s, along with Gene Kirkpatrick and other stellar people like Fred E. Clay, and I credit the Smith-Richardson Foundation with doing so much to create responsible centers for study of public policy, especially its early support for the Foreign Policy Research Institute at the University of Pennsylvania, the American Enterprise Association, then the American Enterprise Institute, and on it went. That support spread wide, and today we see the results. There is a vigorous conservative, mainstream conservative movement in the United States. It's changing society. It has changed society. Dozens upon dozens, well more than 50 or 60, entered the Reagan administration in 1980 as colleagues, people who had been supported by Richardson. That's an important contribution. Randy saw to it that it was a persistent contribution, and for that and many other acts of nobility and generosity throughout his life, we thank Randy and we miss him.